and gentlemen, people of Reading and Berks County, we stand on the threshold of historic change. We are in the pre-stages of real, true, profound, and revolutionary change. This change will bring a restoration and a renewal of the greatness of our past, merge with all the new possibilities of the present and the future. Something profound is indeed happening. There is a real war of ideas being waged in Pennsylvania. It's refreshing, but it's a tough fight. Many of us are on the front lines in the battles for change. I'm proud to be around so many courageous patriots and freedom fighters here today. Thanks for coming. There's a lot happening right before our eyes. We are the witnesses and the participants in a great tidal movement of history that cannot be stopped. Trying to stop this tremendously powerful idea will be as futile as trying to beat back the waves of a tsunami with batons and tasers. Because an idea whose time has come cannot be defeated by any government or any army. Our movement cannot lose because it springs from internal universal longings for freedom. Some say that freedom is dead, but it's not dead. Freedom lives in the hearts of each and every one of us. We are free, beautiful, and independent human beings. And we are free because the God of the universe made us free. We are free because the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution and our Bill of Rights says that we are free. And we are free because we say that we are free. Only natural law and the rights of man exist. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These things are guaranteed to us in our Constitution and our sacred secular documents, our traditions, and the fabric of our cultural identity. It's one thing that all Muslims, Hindu, Christian, Jew, or any other race, creed, color, tint, or hue can all agree on: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. From our perspective, the Constitution settles the matter. There simply is no authority in the Constitution to stop people from being free. In 1681, when William Penn founded Pennsylvania, he specifically intended for the Commonwealth to grow hemp. In 1683, one of the first laws passed by the Pennsylvania General Assembly was an act for encouraging of raising hemp. In 1685, William Penn noted great quantities of hemp already cultivated in his province and declared that hemp would be among the staples of trade here. By the 1690s, the hemp industry was already well established here, with hemp mills in operation, rope manufacturers making rope, hemp hecklers and weavers and farmers in every early settlement growing the crop. Hemp production proceeded with vigor, and in 1729, the county of Lancaster was formed, containing the original Hempfield Township, named for, quote, the vast quantities of hemp that was raised there. A few years later, hemp production proceeded in Berks County, established here with the very first settlers. It turns out that hemp was a major crop here too. Even Daniel Boone grew it before heading to Kentucky. It would figure. Berks County borders on that famous stronghold of hemp of Lancaster County, where the hemp fields went on as far as the eye could see. Lancaster County gets a lot of attention when we think of the historical hemp industry, and rightfully so. Between the years of 1720 and 1870, there were over 100 water-powered mills for processing hemp fiber just in Lancaster County alone, and there were dozens more in all the surrounding counties. Being a good neighbor to Lancaster County, of course, Berks County was no slouch when it came to producing hemp either. Records indicate that it was just as an important crop here too as it was in the garden spot. Records, evidence, and anecdotal stories indicate that hemp was grown in Berks County by virtually all the early settlers, and continued on, at least in some degree, until the 1940s. All of the farmers grew it, and there were many employed and working it. For example, one block up from here, at the foot of 6th Street, was the rope walk of Thomas Jackson. A rope walk was basically a factory that made rope. They called it a walk because the rope walker walked backwards as he was making the rope. A rope could only be made as long as the building was, and it was a long, low building. The Jackson rope walk up on 6th Street here extended for about a quarter of a mile. It turns out that rope making was one of the first industries in Reading, and the Jackson rope walk was established in the 1820s. It was washed away in a flood in 1850, but it was rebuilt at 9th and Oley Streets and ran until the 1950s, making it the longest continuing operating industry in Reading's history. For most of the 1800s, they used locally grown hemp brought in from the Berks County farms until cheaper imported fibers flooded the market. Still, the Jackson Roadblock continued to employ many industrious citizens of Reading. The hemp industry was booming for many years. Hemp mills existed in all parts of Berks County. A 1789 snapshot in time shows that George Ream, R-H-I-E-M, owned a hemp mill and an oil mill on 270 acres of land in Cumru Township, Berks County, Pennsylvania. Ream is just a variation of the spelling of the R-E-M Ream family in Lancaster County's Reamstown, where George's brother John Ream ran another successful hemp mill there. By 1791, the hemp mill and oil mill and 270 acres of land were in the hands of his son, Edward Ream. Edward Ream was also listed as an innkeeper. The inn that he owned was built by his father, the hemp mill owner, George Ream, and it was called 3 Mile Inn because it was 3 miles from the city of Reading. It was the first, or one of the first buildings in what became known as the town of Shillington. Records of Berks are scant. Before 1789, there were huge gaps of missing years, and many of them are written in German. It's not until around 1789 where we start to get a glimpse of what was happening. Still, the tax assessment records from then on seem unreliable, but fortunately, some important information can be learned. For example, the Reams did not own the only hemp mill in Cumru Township. There was also a hemp and oil mill owned by a man named George Straub. I told Keith Straub of National Normal about the Straub Hemp Mill, and he was fascinated to learn this because it turns out that his ancestors were from Berks County. So George Straub, the Cumru hemp miller, may very well be the ancestor of one of the leading cannabis activists and the founder of Normal. John Hoffert also owned a hemp mill in Cumru Township with 350 acres of land. Cumru. There were also 3 paper mill owners there and 3 other oil mills for processing hemp seed and flaxseed oil. In 1786, there was a hemp mill and oil mill jointly owned by Laux and Kalbach in Tupelhocken Township, along with 53 Tupelhocken Township. Built in 1789, and the hemp and oil mill is listed as owned by Adam Kalbach with 172 acres of land. Henry Schrack is also listed as owning a hemp mill and an oil mill in the 1790s. 3 other men owned oil mills there. In Heidelberg Township, Jacob Koval owned a hemp mill along with a Kristen sawmill in the 1780s and 1790s with 97 acres of land. During this time, there were also 2 paper mills and 2 oil mills listed there. At the same time in Hereford, there were 2 hemp mills listed. Both are very hard to read, but one said it was owned by Mayberry and Metz. The other hemp mill looks like Barth Williamson. An oil mill was also listed. In Exeter Township, there was a hemp mill owned by Daniel Snyder, who also owned a sawmill, although the next year they spelled it Schneider. Well, you know, Snyder, Schneider, same difference. 4 paper mills were listed in Exeter. In Maiden Creek, there were no hemp mills listed, but yet there were 6 paper mills in the 1790s. There were paper mills and oil mills in Oley, too. In Alsace Township, Paul Bear owned a paper mill and a hemp mill and 58 acres of land in 1791. Abraham Keller also owned a paper mill and hemp mill, and John Kirkner owned a paper mill and hemp mill, too, in the 1790s. 2 other paper mills and oil mills were listed there for the same period. In Amity Township, there were 4 paper mill owners and an oil mill listed, as well as an oil mill in Albany Township, and oil mills in Windsor and Robeson. In Bern Township, there was a hemp mill owned by John Stout. He also owned a Kristen sawmill. Bern Township records are in German until 1802, though. In Rockland Township, J.P. Fenstermacher owned a hemp mill, sawmill, and 99 acres. Of course, the usual paper mills and oil were and of course, there was a hemp mill, sawmill, grist mill, and oil mill owned by John Potts. His father was the founder of Pottstown. Of course, these are not all of Berks County hemp mills. These are just the mills that are found in the scant records during a window of time of about 20 years. Hemp production started way before this period in Berks County and proceeded many years after. The true story is undoubtedly much bigger. The early citizens of Berks used that hemp not only for rope, but also for grain bags, Conestoga wagon covers, curtains, tablecloths, handkerchiefs, napkins, pillowcases, bedding, towels, pants, shirts, dresses, and just about any kind of fabric. It was often blended with wool, flax, cotton, or silk to achieve a variety of textures. When the clothing was worn out, it was recycled and made into paper in one of the many local Berks County paper mills. There were just as many oil mills to extract oil from the many tons of excess hemp seed as there were, which was a byproduct of the enormous hemp industry grown for fiber. That oil was used in paints, varnishes, lubricants, lacquers, printer's ink, and lamp oil. The remaining seed cake was fed to the livestock. Whole seed was also raised and sold for bird seed, and there was a big industry to sell seeds to other farmers who wanted to grow hemp. Many of the same people who owned the mills, hemp mills, also owned oil mills to go with it. So what happened? On May 22nd, 1933, Pennsylvania banned cannabis and hemp, calling it, quote, marijuana. It was banned here a full 4 years before the federal prohibition was enacted on August 2nd, 1937. So we just had the anniversary 2 months ago. The 80-year anniversary of marijuana prohibition in Pennsylvania. 80 years of war. Over in Lancaster County, the first person that we know of to be arrested under the new state marijuana laws was an 81-year-old man named Enos Schaefer. Enos was growing a long strip of hemp alongside his garden. He admitted to growing the crop but said he had no idea that it was illegal. As far as he was concerned, he was growing hemp, and he was growing it for seeds for his chickens to eat, a legitimate use for hemp and quite common. Can you imagine arresting an 81-year-old Lancaster County hemp farmer and charging him with growing marijuana? He was arrested on July 5th, 1938. But that one old hemp farmer, Enos Schaefer, became the first victim, at least in Lancaster County, to these terrible, insane, and immoral laws. Since then, the police have waged a campaign of terror on the citizens of Pennsylvania, arresting 250,000 Pennsylvanians in the last decade, and promising to arrest 250,000 more over the next decade, at a cost of $3.5 billion. They have not seen a reduction in the number of Pennsylvanians using cannabis one bit. And in fact, despite all their brutal tactics, money spent, and 80 years of war, they have seen continued increase in numbers of people using this plant. The only thing they have been effective at is stopping sick people from using it as a medicine and stopping farmers from growing hemp as an industrial plant. This madness must stop. One thing my mind dwells upon sometime are the numbers. We know that in the state of Pennsylvania, there are more than 1 million people who smoke cannabis every year. We currently arrest 25,000 people a year for cannabis offenses at a cost of $350 million. Now come on. Any fool can plainly see that you can never stop 1 million people by arresting 25,000. The people maintaining the status quo are basically defending this asinine, backwards policy that is so obviously doomed to failure on paper and in real life. I was a tank crewman in the Marines. While true, I was not a general or any other extraordinary tactician or master of strategy, I did, however, rise to the high and lofty ranks of Lance Corporal. I can tell you, though, what I see is just not going to work and cannot work. So what would have to be done? How about they double their efforts? Say, arrest 50,000 Pennsylvanians at a cost of $700 million a year. They might be able to pull that off for a while, but still, you got the same problem. You've got over 1 million people still smoking cannabis in the state, even after you arrest 50,000. So no, that won't do it either. Perhaps a bold proposal then. How about arrest 100,000 Pennsylvanians at a cost of $1.5 billion a year? A 10-year campaign that will arrest 1 million Pennsylvanians at the cost of just $10.5 billion. That might send a strong message, and then you could probably get that number from 1 million down to half that. Of course, if you arrest that many people, $1.5 billion a year won't cover it, because then you have to hire an additional army of police and build many new and massive prisons. Maybe to show how really serious they are, stiffing penalties for even minor possession is mandatory jail time. So why aren't they proposing that? The fact is, there is no way, even here in Pennsylvania, that people would ever let that happen. No way. If they think that people are taken to the streets now, imagine the discontent if they tried that. We're already sick of it. The Pennsylvania prison population has increased 500% since 1980. A few months ago, the pundits were saying that PA was in no mood to relax marijuana laws. Well, guess what? They are in no mood to shell out hundreds of millions more dollars a year on an escalation or even maintenance of such a drastically failed and destructive policy that is not only wrong, cruel, and immoral, but blatantly stupid as well. The status quo simply cannot be maintained, and change is so obviously coming that it can be seen by all, even those who oppose it. If we do nothing and only maintain the status quo, over the next 10 years, more than 250,000 Pennsylvanians will have their lives ruined or severely interrupted by arrest, while more than 1 million people a year continue to keep an underground, chaotic, unregulated market controlled in many cases by street thugs, criminal gangs, and large drug cartels going. How could that possibly be better than a legal market with common sense government regulations controlled by Pennsylvania businessmen? How? Meanwhile, they're kicking in doors, cracking heads, and throwing people in prison, and wrecking the lives of over 250,000 Pennsylvanians over that same decade. The people of Colorado and Washington and probably Oregon and California and several other states will be living free, building their economies, funding their schools and other worthwhile essentials, raking in over $1 billion in tax revenue in each respective state. Do the citizens of Pennsylvania really support this injustice? My opinion is that when the facts are laid out before them, they will support change. You're wrong. All of this wasted effort has had such tragic results. In addition to the ruined lives, torn apart families, billions down the drain in enforcement, billions lost on tax revenue that could be collected, etc. We're preventing sick people who could legitimately benefit from cannabis. It's just not fair, especially when an astonishing 82% of Pennsylvanians support medical cannabis being legal again in the state, just as it was when many companies and enterprising individuals grew cannabis in PA and made various cannabis extract medicines that could be bought in any pharmacy in the state, even here in Reading. But let's get back to hemp. The same madness that makes the social use of cannabis a crime has led to the ban on agricultural hemp. Imagine, this crop was grown by virtually all of our early ancestors in PA, in every settlement, in all quarters of the state. How dumb is it to ban a plant that is non-toxic, non-lethal, renewable resource for paper, plastics, fiberboard, hempcrete, biofuel, and thousands of other products? Our farmers want to grow hemp. Resolutions have been passed in favor of hemp by the Lancaster Farm Bureau, the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau, the Pennsylvania State Grange, and the Pennsylvania Farmers Union, but the lawmakers are deaf and blind to what's going on. To me, as a former Marine who took a vow to uphold and defend the Constitution settles the matter. Cannabis and hemp prohibition is illegal and a constitutional breach, even against our Pennsylvania state constitution. What do the people of Pennsylvania think? What do the polls tell us? Where does Pennsylvania really stand on this issue? The national polls show for the first time the majority of Americans support the re-legalization of cannabis. The people of Pennsylvania are no different. At least 82% of Pennsylvanians support medical cannabis, as revealed by a poll done earlier this year by Terry Madonna of F&M. A recent poll conducted by Muhlenberg College and commissioned by the Allentown Morning Call revealed that while 40% of Pennsylvanians oppose cannabis legalization, astonishing 57% would not oppose the full legalization of cannabis in the Keystone State. In January of 1775, the people of Berks County met right here in Reading to ratify the recommendations of the Continental Congress and propose a provincial convention in Philadelphia. It was the time of the American Revolution, and an urgent call went out all over Pennsylvania to grow as much hemp as possible and for everyone to unite in producing our necessities and defending our liberty. The secretary of the meeting was hemp mill owner John Potts, and he recorded the following. To the inhabitants of Berks County, friends and countrymen, the affairs of America grow every day more serious, and our unhappy disputes hasten to a conclusion. It becomes us now to call and exercise every public virtue and to act as men engaged in the solemn cause of liberty. The least disunion, the least neglect of duty will be fatal. The wise regulations pointed out by the Continental Congress for the preservation of our rights must be faithfully observed if we expect to succeed in this present, just, and necessary defense of our liberties. We also beg leave to recommend to the good people of Berks County an attention to raising flax and hemp and to promote every kind of manufacturing and industry in their respective families. And finally, we request that this awful crisis of affairs, it will be carefully attend to the important advice given by the Congress to avoid every species of extravagance, luxury, and dissipation. Signed by order of the committee, Jonathan Potts, Secretary. Fast forward to now. 2 centuries after the revolution, we can barely remember what we fought for. The hemp has been eliminated from the fields, outlawed and banished. The memory of it erased. The jobs and manufacturers are gone. Poverty weighs a ton. Crime is an everyday occurrence, and the poor are sucked into the prison system and spat out. Teachers are laid off, and schools are shut down. Yet what is their solution? Warehouse more and more of the masses in private prisons run on profit, not justice. Throwing everyone in prison is not the answer. We know what the answer is, and that's why we're bringing this message here where it's needed the most. We must stop decimating the communities with the drug war, and we must establish a legal regulated market for cannabis in Reading and put the hemp back in the fields of Berks County and bring jobs back to the city. I handed out flyers a few times here in Reading with my friends Manuel Gomez and Erica Lynn, and I'll tell you what, it was really hard to find anyone against it. Only 2 people were against it, and even they were not hard in their opposition. They admitted that cannabis probably had medicinal value, and everyone agrees people should not go to jail for it. Reading is primed and ready to receive this message and make their voices heard. Too many people are suffering in their lives as a direct consequence of this war. Several years ago, Reading was declared the poorest city in America. Mayor Von Spencer recently said that's no longer true. He says that Reading is now is only the 6th poorest in the nation. Either way, the fact is, poverty is grinding down the city and the people in it. Does anybody disagree with that? Does anybody believe that someday there will be no pot in Reading? Of course not. That day will never come. That means unless we make changes to the law, the authorities will continue to have easy pickings to arrest the poor and disenfranchised and put them in the grinder of the prison system. That endlessly revolving door where half the population takes their turns going in and out of prison. There is a better way, and everybody on the streets knows it. People are just waiting and bursting to be heard. The pain has been borne for far too long.
Too many families lost.
The agony and devastation has been terrible. In a city beset with so much crime, we know a solution. The solution is to end the drug war. Specifically, though, we need to establish a legal, regulated market for cannabis in Reading and throughout Pennsylvania. That is why we will fight so hard for Senate Bill 528 and support the candidacy of John Hanger for governor and other candidates who support real reform. Talking to the people on the streets, we found many who had spent years in jail or who knew people who had spent years in prison. Life is cruel and hard to so many people. The main difference between the ones who go to jail and the ones who do not, or they are the ones who get caught, that's all. No one should ever go to jail ever again for a plan. We intend to stop a war on the people of Pennsylvania. I hope all of you will join us as we make our voices heard and send a collective cry for freedom and justice to the heavens. But I want to tell you something. Change is coming to Pennsylvania. For the first time in our lifetimes, legislation has been introduced in PA to fully legalize cannabis. It was introduced by State Senator Dalen Leach. It's called Senate Bill 528. It will allow us each to grow up to 6 plants and allow the non-monetary transfer up to an ounce of cannabis to friends, bars, employers from punishing workers for off-the-job cannabis use. I am on a mission to raise knowledge, awareness, and support for Senate Bill 528. And that is what the purpose of the Hemp Freedom Tour is all about. Supporting not some vague, hypothetical, and theoretical concept, but a real bill that will create real change. In addition, John Hanger is here and running for governor and has announced his 3-step program that he'll talk about for marijuana law reform. We're honored to have him here, and we need to do everything we can to get John Hanger the Democratic nomination. Tom Corbett must go. We want John Hanger as our next governor of Pennsylvania. So we see that despite the darkness of our present situation, we see the light of change and the prophetic shimmer of glimmering hope for the future. Our movement is still young, yet look how far we've come. People are coming together, finally. And we're doing this out of love and compassion because we care about each other. We know a better way. You know what? I think Reading gets it anyway. Just 2 months ago, Mayor Von Spencer was at the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C. and signed a resolution adopted here to concentrate more on treatment and other options other than incarceration and calling the war on drugs a failure. Mayor Spencer almost gets it, but he needs some convincing yet for him to understand that the legal, regulated market for marijuana is the answer. Just have 2 minutes here. 3 years ago, the city of Reading hired Stephen Haver as a community development specialist. Stephen was a former manager of the Sovereign Center, a job he lost when he was found guilty of cultivating marijuana in the basement of his home in Reading. Mercy was extended to him, and the mayor said he's a good man and he'll do a good job for us. We hired him to do a job in community development. He can do that very well. Another city official said he's at the higher end of being overqualified for the position. Other officials said he deserves a second chance, and the criminal case has no relation to the job. He who is without sin raised their hand, said one. If mercy can be extended to Stephen Haver, how about the average person in Reading? But change is coming. When the Revolutionary War was won, the Liberty Bell was rung in Philadelphia, bringing out the beauty of its inscription. Proclaim liberty throughout the land and to all the inhabitants therein. Throughout the land, thousands of bells were ringing, echoing in jubilant celebration everywhere. The ropes that rang the bells of liberty all across the new nation were manufactured with homegrown American hemp grown by the proud patriots who responded to their leaders' call for independence. So now we say, let freedom ring at 5th and Penn in Reading. Let freedom ring from the pagoda high on Reading Hill. Let freedom ring in Eula Valley and Kutztown, Hamburg and Boyertown. Let freedom ring be heard in the halls of power in Harrisburg. Let freedom...
Let it ring, brother, let it ring!
That someday the people of Pennsylvania will be able to declare, free at last, thank God Almighty we're free at last. So I don't want anyone to get discouraged. People may doubt that Pennsylvania will do it, but we sure as hell aren't going the other way. Sooner or later, the people of Pennsylvania will demand change, and it will happen. Always remember that I told you this. Thank everybody for coming out. We have a really special guest, and this is, we're very lucky to have him. This is a man, he's running for the governor of Pennsylvania. He needs support. If he can get 400,000 votes in the primary election in May, he will be the Democratic nominee. So we're really happy. We think this is a popular issue, and we think when the other candidates see that it's popular, they're going to want to get a piece of it too. But we're always going to remember who that first candidate was, the first one who took that stand. And we're standing by him. We're really proud and happy to have him. Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm round of applause, Mr. John Hanger.
Thank you.
Guys, how we stopping, man?
Oh, thanks, man.